Birmingham. My name is Bill Murray, and I'm the president of the Weather Company, which is based here in Birmingham. I work with a gentleman. Thank you, Dr. Doswell. My name is Bill Murray, and I am the president of the Weather Company, based here in Birmingham, and it's my honor to welcome you to my hometown. We had a lot of weather brains here last October for the National Weather Association meeting, an amazing event that happened to achieve a lot of extra significance because of what happened 1 week ago, 1 year ago this week. And that event did take on a lot more significance. One person that I got to work very closely with during that week just walked in the room. He's got a very busy week delivering talks all over central Alabama. And that was the chairman of the National Weather Association meeting, the annual meeting here in Birmingham, Mr. Jim Stefkovich, the meteorologist in charge from Birmingham. He's here with us this morning, and I wanted to give him a second to say a few words of welcome. Jim, if you'll come and take the podium, please.
Thanks, Bill. 1762, 109, hike. I'm sorry, we won the national championship in Alabama in the last 3 years in football. Roll Tide, War Eagle. Sorry. I went to Penn State. I don't have a dog in the fight. 17 was the number of strong or violent tornadoes that occurred in Alabama a year ago on the 27th. 62 was the total for the day. 109 was the total number that occurred across the state. 109 broke the all-time yearly record for the state in 1 month. It's a very difficult week, and I apologize, I'm out of breath. I just ran from another briefing I went to, so I apologize getting out of shape. Thank you for being here. I had the privilege of being at the Weather Ready Nation meeting in December in Norman, and I'm very proud for you to be here and to be a part of this. I hope you get a chance online or get a newspaper. AL.com is our local newspaper online, to read some of the stories. Tragedy, messages of hope. I hope you get a chance to talk to folks like Bill Murray, who called me the day after the 27th, who was watching on TV the wedge going through Tuscaloosa, right near the University of Alabama campus where his son's a student, and him turning to his precious wife and saying, we have to get a body bag ready to go out there tomorrow. I'm sorry, it's still emotional for me. This is a great opportunity here today. We're learning that social scientists and physical scientists need each other to come up with solutions. And I'm really looking forward to you guys working together, looking forward to being here as much as I can, and welcome to Birmingham. Enjoy what we have to offer. Thank you.
Jim and his staff couldn't have done a finer job on that day. And the example that he's talking about, we were actually working that day, forecasting. And I told my wife, I will not be able to communicate with you today. So when they let you out of school early, she's a teacher, you need to come to the office and sit there. And that made her comfortable. And my team and we were working, and when we saw that tornado on the video in Tuscaloosa, I literally, as Jim said, turned to her and said, we're going to pick up a body tonight, because we knew where the tornado was and where his home was, and we had prepared him an hour and 40 minutes in advance, but we knew that tornado might be unsurvivable. So it was a very sobering and humbling experience. Choosing a location for this was not very hard. Steve Koch approached me in Norman and asked, if I would help with that process. We toyed around with St. Louis and with different locations. Joplin was an option, obviously, but their infrastructure is damaged and their hotels are all full. Tuscaloosa would have been an okay option. Their hotels all survived the event, but it's an extra leg for everyone to travel. So given the fact that the Tuscaloosa to Birmingham tornado, if it hadn't made a left turn, it would have come right through this building. But fortunately it did, like the 1998 F5 did. Or we would be talking about rebuilding this building and probably having even more fatalities than we had. But my job is to talk to you about logistics this morning. We're all glad that you're here. The Sheraton in Birmingham is a fine convention hotel. It should have all the facilities that you're used to having. But some things that you need to know in your registration pack include the fact that we do have internet in this plenary area, and we also have internet in the breakout rooms. If you'll just look for the SSID that says WRN, you should be able to access that with any of your devices, your laptops or your smartphones, without entering any password. We've tested it. It seems to work, and that should be fine. You've got an agenda in your packet also, and I'll give you kind of the boiled down version here, the 3-day quick glance. But basically today we're going to be in general session here this morning. We'll have a break, and then we will depart this area and go to the 4th floor of the hotel's atrium tower where the breakout rooms are all located. Now, you have a map inside your registration pack that shows those rooms and a layout of them. There will be staff to direct you from the front door of this plenary area, the Birmingham Ballroom, around. But what you'll do is go through the lobby and up that escalator that is right there by the front desk, and then there is an elevator immediately on your left. You'll take it up one stop to the 4th floor, and when you come off there, there'll be additional staff to help you get in the right room. Now you say, how do I know what room is the right room for me? The right room is on the stars that are on the front of your name badge. There are 6 colors there. A little hard to distinguish between orange and red, but if you need any help, Ryan Stennett, who's with our conference team up here, is running the soundboard and the computer. Ryan can help you with that information, and Nancy Galloway on my staff too, or Dr. Brooks or Dr. Lindell can help you make sure that we get you in the right room. Now, if you are a group leader, you will need to come by and see Ryan before you go to the breakout sessions, because he'll give you a flash drive that actually has a PowerPoint presentation that we want you to fill out in there. That's to make it easy when we come back to plenary. We won't have to do a lot of shifting around. The information will be easily put up on the screen for us to review. And I've introduced the conference staff, Ryan and Nancy. They're on the front row here. Get to know them. If you need anything, they're here to help. Birmingham has an amazingly good restaurant scene. We have at least 3 of the James Beard winners, which is a high accolade, and Chris Hastings of Hot and Hot Fish Club, if you're familiar with the shows on the Food Network, actually won the Iron Chef battle with Bobby Flay. So if you get a chance tonight or tomorrow night, I would strongly recommend that you enjoy one of the fine restaurants in Birmingham. We gave you a little short list of my favorites in can't miss dining in the registration pack, and hopefully some groups will get together and go out and do that. There is a trolley that runs from the side of the hotel that is adjacent to the Civic Center. It curves around and goes down Birmingham's Main Street, which is 20th Street, to the 5 Points District, which is sort of our entertainment and dining mecca. And several of the restaurants that are indicated with an asterisk on that can't miss sheet, you'll find those in that area. There's also a little Birmingham guide. Thanks to the Birmingham Convention and Visitors Bureau for helping us with registration. And they actually paid for the drinks last night, since that's not included in our budget. We're very thankful to them for that and for paying for the reception. You've got a participants list also in there that I think that you'll find handy. And without further ado, I think I'll bring Dr. Harold Brooks, one of the co-chairs of this week's event, to the podium so that he can introduce our first special speaker. Dr. Brooks.
Well, good morning, and on behalf of Bill and Michael and Dell and I, we'd really like to thank you all for getting here. And this is going to be as a word of warning and of welcome. This is a workshop, and our anticipation is you're going to work the next couple of days. So we appreciate what you've done to get ready to come here. And we think we've got a lot of really good people in this room that you'll get to know, and that we're really looking forward to what comes out of that. I'd like to introduce, though, as our first speaker, Dr. Stephen Koch. He's the director of the National Severe Storms Laboratory, and also the chairman of the executive committee for this meeting. And he will have introduce a video presentation and then give a brief summary of the workshop in December in Norman. Dr. Koch.
this is already, wait for me to hit the, who's hitting that? Who's in the chair?
Thanks, Steve. Thank you for serving as chair of our executive committee, and extend my thanks also to the members.
Okay. I should introduce our first speaker here, okay? This is Dr. Catherine Sullivan. Who is she? She's NOAA's chief scientist. She also wears another hat. She's assistant, I have to read this. I can never get this one right. She's the assistant secretary of environmental observation and prediction and deputy administrator. All right, so she's very top level within NOAA. With that having been said, Catherine and I, Jack Hayes, the director of National Weather Service, and others got together right after that Norman Symposium up on the 6th floor of the National Weather Center and talked about what we needed to do next. And as Bill mentioned to you, we talked about a number of different venues and dates and so on. And it is no coincidence that we are holding this meeting here in Birmingham almost to the date 1 year after the event that affected Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. With that having been said now, Catherine Sullivan.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you for serving as chair of our executive committee, and extend my thanks also to the members of the organizing committees and everyone who's gathered there today. On behalf of Dr. Lubchenko, welcome to Birmingham and to this very important workshop. I can't tell you how sorry I am that I can't be with you there in person this week. Recognizing that this is the first anniversary of the worst tornado outbreak in U.S. history, that event, followed by the event in Joplin in May, became the catalyst for our Weather Ready Nation initiative, and both events certainly confirm my passion for these goals. I toured Tuscaloosa this past February with Jim Stefkovich and the University of Alabama's Director of Emergency Management, Dr. Donald Keith, also flew over the damaged area in a small plane. There are mountains of work yet to be done out there to rebuild, as in all the communities that were hit last spring. You are here today because of what began in Norman, Oklahoma last December. Starting the conversation in Norman was the first time that experts from multiple disciplines came together. Social and physical scientists, structural engineers, emergency managers, broadcast meteorologists, private sector meteorologists, our own National Weather Service meteorologists, all for a common goal: to identify, prioritize, and set in motion actions that can improve the nation's resiliency against severe weather, and especially against tornadoes. We hope to protect lives and property better in the future than what we saw last year. Back at our meeting in December in Norman, we reminded ourselves that nature, as it always has, will replay the powerful forces that were unleashed in 2011, that new communities and cities yet unnamed would suffer as well. And as we've seen since then, devastating tornadoes have indeed hit Harrisburg, Illinois, Henryville, Indiana, and earlier this month, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. There have been some amazing stories of action, readiness, and heroism surfacing from these events. People who had a plan, executed the plan, and saved their own lives as well as those of others. Stephanie Decker, a young mother in Henryville, Indiana, who got her husband's text message saying, "Take cover now," grabbed her kids and sheltered them with her body while a violent tornado roared overhead. She lost her legs in the process, but she and both of her children survived that EF4. And a grandmother in Forney, Texas, who held on to an 18-month-old boy by his foot while an EF3 tried to yank the child from her grasp and take him up into the storm. Again, her house was destroyed, but all survived, and houses can be replaced. Of course, these stories of heroism made national headlines. They showed, we think, that these people really were a force of nature in their own right. So perhaps our rallying cry should be to become a force of nature. I think this is a message of empowerment. It speaks to being prepared, to taking action, to inspiring and prompting others to do the same. The President of the United States is taking notice through his issuance of a presidential proclamation for a National Severe Weather Preparedness Week, which is going on right now. And many of you and other colleagues took action back in January at the town hall during the American Meteorological Society meeting in New Orleans. There was incredible interest at that session, which was standing room only. One topic of particular interest then was how to get the next generation engaged in this. Physical scientists, social scientists, communications experts, How do we do this, and what role can our universities play in that action? This, of course, ties to one of the things that you will tackle in your few days together, the setting of a research agenda that spans all of these domains and that can entrain the best minds in our country today and help train the best minds that will serve in the future. The type of goals we have cannot be achieved unless we really are fused together as a richly intertwined science community. We are here to frame the research problem, identify the key challenges, and formulate the most promising research agenda to advance towards these goals. We must recognize the value that social sciences add to the usefulness of all critical environmental intelligence. So we are gathered now in Birmingham to work together to develop this research agenda, one that will ultimately result in the saving of many lives. I have 3 specific things to ask of you: real, rapid, and innovative. I ask that you make real connections with other people from other disciplines and fields who are gathered with you in Birmingham. Reach out across your normal boundaries and strive to gain a really broader, deeper understanding of the perspectives, the attributes, the expertise that you have gathered in that room. I ask that you work in rapid feedback cycles, rapid feedback and rapid learning cycles, not only during your meeting, but in the research agenda that you set out. Make sure that we have mechanisms built in that allow us to harvest learning from every single step along the path through research into action. And finally, innovative new partnerships. Severe Weather Preparedness Week, as I mentioned earlier, running this week, represents a stronger partnership between NOAA, FEMA, and private sector meteorologists, stronger than it's ever been before. Joint web pages, live web chats with joint science experts in leadership, social media. We're reaching for new ways to connect to each other and new ways to connect to the general public, ways to personalize the threats that confront our citizens. Be a Force of Nature can grow into a drumbeat not only for NOAA, but for all of us involved with hazard resilience and preparedness. U.S. Geological Survey, FEMA, and others come to mind. But this will take new connections. What new connections, what innovative new partnerships can you spawn during your time in Birmingham? In closing, I thank you for taking this opportunity. I thank you for coming together and devoting your time and energies, your expertise to this vital challenge. I look forward to seeing the progress that you make this week and following the research agenda that you lay out. Now I'm delighted to turn the floor back to Dr. Steve Koch.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Paul Schlauter, who helped immensely in putting that production together for your benefit. This picture, I think, pretty much tells us why we're here today. I know where this picture was taken, but it could be Raleigh, North Carolina, and it could be Joplin, it could be Tuscaloosa, it could be Birmingham. Over nearly 600 people lost their lives last year. Incredible. I would like to just dedicate this workshop to the memory of those who did lose their lives last year. Can I just take a moment of silence, please? Close your laptops. Thank you. I'll move ahead with putting this in some perspective. Let's see. Do I point this to the screen? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. As I mentioned, I never thought we would see a day when nearly 600 people died due to tornadoes. 1953. I was barely born then. This is before the age of tornado warnings, basically. All kinds of records are broken last year. You can read them here. Deadliest single tornado, Joplin. Most number of tornadoes observed in a month in April, and most EF5 tornadoes in a year. We don't normally see 6 EF5s in a year. And late April outbreak was among the 10 top largest natural catastrophic losses in the United States. Let's put this in some perspective. Was 2011 all that much of an anomaly? In some sense, yes, but if you follow this curve here, this begins back in 1960 over here and ends in the year 2010. That's that big graph bar right there. The bottom line is that of the number of things we're looking at here, that's geophysical events like tsunamis and earthquakes, volcanoes, weather events, hydrological events, climate events, by far the biggest substantial growth has occurred with storm events. Okay, that's 74 right there. So with climate right behind it. And these statistics from 2011 did not include last year's devastating drought and heat, which some of us from Oklahoma and Texas remember quite well. If you look at it in terms of losses, this is insurance losses in billions of dollars. If you go back to 1980, we had about $2 billion. It has grown rapidly. I would say almost exponentially, a slow exponential growth. It's basically quintupled since in the last 30 years, and that's before 2011. So 2011 is, I think, part of a longer trend, although an outstanding spike on its own, rather. All right, so NOAA took interest in this matter. NOAA has 4 primary objectives as an agency. One of them is to develop a weather-ready nation. The purpose is, by increasing our readiness as a nation, Americans would be better prepared to protect themselves and their livelihoods, as well as better mitigate, respond to, and recover from weather-related disasters. In order to do that, NOAA's involvement in this is threefold. One is to develop improved products and services, which are based off of better science. They're more responsive to the needs of the public, and they're meaningful, more meaningful. Okay, we'll talk a lot about this in the next couple of days, how to put better meaning into these warnings. Providing more efficient delivery of those products. If we're living in a world of rapid technology advances, are we taking best use of that? And number 3, effectively communicating to get the kind of response that's anticipated and desired on the public, on the part of those who hear the warnings. Being weather-ready nation goes beyond government. It's not even something NOAA itself can make happen. It is a community effort. It's going to require national dialogue with our stakeholders in NOAA, with the National Science Foundation as partners, and many other groups throughout the nation to achieve this. So, in Norman, here's some pictures. Some of you are here. I think that's Paul Slaughter there. It is to identify, the goal was to identify, prioritize, and set in motion actions to improve the nation's resiliency against severe weather, with emphasis on tornadoes to protect lives and property. You say, well, how's that goal any different than the goal we have here in Birmingham? I'll come back to that a little bit later. In Norman, we had 7 community groups. You see them listed there, senior management folks like myself, I guess, risk reduction and community resilience experts, emergency decision managers, ECO types and people like that, communications experts, physical, social scientists, weather operations people, and policy specialists. In addition to the 7 community groups, we had 7 cross-cut groups through those 7 communities, which then met to have a further dialogue. Out of the 7 cross-cut groups, we had 7 themes. Number 7 keeps coming up here. These are the 7. I just want to spend a minute on this. This is the main result of that Norman meeting. We had about 3 times as many people there in Norman. This group here is about a third as large. We'll have to do 3 times as much work. That's how it works. It's math. All right, so 7 themes. Number 1, strongly integrate social and physical science. You all know that's why you're here. I don't have to repeat that theme. I do want to emphasize public's understanding of warnings, what they mean versus watches, and different kinds of warnings, and their perceptions of risk are key gaps. Number 2, warnings. False alarms have a very high false alarm rate, something on the order of 75 to 80%. Unacceptably high. That number has not changed in many years. We need to look at the science underlying how to improve upon that versus probability of detection. Number 3, updating and assessing warning dissemination strategies. I mentioned wireless and other technologies out there. An effective strategy must deal with those who don't have access to that technology. There are people with disabilities, the elderly, there are people outside of microwave coverage, there are people outside of internet who don't have money to buy internet, and we have to deal with this as well. Number 4, advancing physical modeling. The meteorologists working towards improving the lead time and the accuracy and the precision, as we always have. Where are we at with that, and where does that need to go? We'll hear about warning and forecasts, I'm sure, pretty soon. Number 5, improving outreach and education. To whom? The agencies and to groups. Here's the bottom line is, if you want people to be better prepared, you better be able to communicate threat effectively and in a credible manner. What does that mean, credible? We get warnings all the time. Do you believe them? Okay? How many times do you hear warning and nothing happens, right? So I'm sorry. I'm a meteorologist. I'm saying that word for no, but it does happen. All right? So we have to consider what credibility is and how to improve upon this to the public and better communicate. We're living in a time of ensemble modeling and providing measures of uncertainty in our weather forecast to the public. How do we communicate that to the public? Okay. Number 6, when assessments are done, like the Joplin tornado assessment, still ongoing, these major severe weather events are monitored by the National Weather Service after the fact. Involving external independent experts alongside them, I think, would benefit this more so than we do right now. And then number 7, building coalitions with the private sector in the issuance of severe weather warnings, I think. Those are the 7 major themes. You all are part of a process here. We've already had 5 events. Here they are. It began in Norman, the AMS Town Hall meeting Catherine spoke to. The National Severe Weather Workshop is held in Norman every March. If you come to them, you'll see people who are forecasters, people from the private sector who develop applications and also safe rooms and things like that, media people. So it's a collection of those people. Number 4, the NEMA conference focus was on extreme weather this year. AMS Washington Forum held a couple weeks ago. There's an emphasis here on weather, water, and climate ready nation. And this is going to convey itself later this summer, as you'll see in a minute, to another thing going on. Here is the meeting right now we're at. And number 7 coming up is a very high-level meeting in Washington, D.C. among the executive branch and the legislative branch of the federal government. This is getting very, very high-level recognition here. Number 8 is Natural Hazards Research Applications Workshop in Broomfield. And then going back to the point I'm making between the AMS Forum held in Washington a couple weeks ago, coming up in August in Norman, we have the coordinator of that, Betsy, you in our audience somewhere, Betsy Weatherhead, is actually coordinating this Weather Ready Nation with a theme on social media and messaging with the public and private and academic sectors. So strong connection between this meeting, I think, and that one coming up. Glad that she's with us. And then we're a number of things coming up here in the future, as you can read here. All right. So you're part of a long process here. 13 events. All right. In addition, the National Science Foundation has a program to create a more disaster resilient society. This is an interdisciplinary program, as you can read here. And some of the objectives of this program are obviously consistent. If you can read, you can see the connection here with the Weather Ready Nation objectives. The mission and goals are to advance science, engineering, and education to inform societal actions needed for environmental and economic sustainability and sustainable human well-being. It has 3 major goals. One is in the area of interdisciplinary research and education. Second is building partnerships and linkages with our partners. And number 3 is developing a workforce that's really trained in interdisciplinary scholarship that's needed to address these complex issues of sustainability. Ooh, and here we are today. So in Birmingham, this is these are the meaty slides. I do want to spend a few minutes on these ones. I have 3 slides coming up, and that's the end of what I have, 3 slides. Goal of this workshop, you know what it is. The blue highlights the difference between this meeting and the Norman meeting. What's the difference? The focus of you all is to actually develop a plan, physical and social science integrated plan. Okay? The Norman meeting was much more general than that. All right? And in addition to resiliency, there's a focus here on readiness and responsiveness. So these are the 3 key differences between this meeting and the Norman meeting. Our participation here, in this group, we have a broad spectrum of folks across many disciplines, like we did in Norman, very similar in that regard. The expected outcome, expected of whom? Well, who's expecting what? Well, the supporters of this group are from program management at NOAA and the National Science Foundation. We have leaders here, program managers. We have from the National Science Foundation, we have some lead program managers here. Brad Smolls over here, Dennis Wenger. Did Bob O'Connor make it? Bob, are you here? Dennis, where's Dennis? Dennis, is Bob here? Bob's not here, okay. Chung Hu Lu. And we have a number of program managers from NOAA as well throughout the audience, and Roger Wakamoto, the director of NCAR, is over here in the front row. So we have quite a group here interested in outcomes. And what do they expect? Number one, an agreement on the top research questions. I'm not going to tell you how many, but it'll probably be something on the order of 5 to 10. It won't be one, and I sure hope it's not 25, but something that's actionable, something we can deal with, maybe 5 to 10. These are critical research questions. Your goal, come up with a list. All right. Number two, output. Okay, we want a process and a schedule, a documented process to develop these plans and a schedule for doing it. I'll come back to the schedule in a minute here. So in developing this schedule and process, bear in mind you need to define a scope. That is, what are you not going to do? What are you going to do? And you need to develop potential, what Catherine Sullivan refers to as innovative partnerships or collaborations across the agencies, across groups, and define metrics. A plan that's not quantifiable is not a plan that's actionable, bottom line. All right? So we need to have real metrics for performance and milestones. So here they are. These are the guiding principles of your workshop. There are 6 of them. We've already done number 1. These excellent white paper reports, I think, were a remarkable contribution. Thank you all for contributing to that. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I had nothing to do with that. So the organizing committee, in particular Harold and Mike, I think played really key roles in helping put those papers together. So thank you. Number 2, integration. We talked about that. Number 3, quantification. Number 4, defining both short and long term. The 2 agencies, NOAA and NSF, have somewhat different emphasis on outcomes. NOAA has a need to show something in the next year or 2 of what improvements have been made to the operational process. A little bit more than on the NSF side, which is a little bit more longer term in its thinking in terms of research and development exercises. Number 5, manage expectations. Let's face it, we're living in a fiscally constrained environment. Any of us in the federal government know that very well. And bear in mind that no new money is on the horizon, but maybe, look, this is how I stand on this issue. I believe that good science can be a compelling argument in Congress. I really do believe that, and that you can change the political process. If you make a really compelling argument about what needs to be done, you show that you can do it in a cost-effective way and have real outcomes that benefit people, you can change the process. We are American citizens at the same time we work for our agencies and so on. Number 6, focus on research applications and A to R. This is a NOAA focus in particular. You can see listed there, NOAA has an interest in seeing anything that comes out of this as being tested and proven. Okay, and then my last slide, prioritization guidelines. Going back to Catherine's remark, first of all, you need to frame the questions. Then you need to identify the challenges, and then you need to formulate the most promising agenda. So frame, identify, formulate. You all have a copy of this, so you can refer to this, my presentation. Finally, as you formulate it, consider how you're going to prioritize things. The agencies do want you to tell them where you consider priorities to lie. How would you might possibly do that? Consider time. How much time is it going to take to do the work? And versus the societal urgency of getting that particular thing done. Consider, is it practical? As not just actionable, but can it actually result in outcomes that will benefit people? Can you make that persuasive argument? Number 3, what are the resource requirements? Funding resources, partnership requirements, maybe a new center of excellence. I mean, think creatively here, folks. What kind of partnerships, what kind of things do we need to make this happen? And number 4, what is the potential to move this into an operational capability? So the program managers have requested through me to inform you to make an effort to prioritize actions that could capture the key research areas. That's probably the most important thing I can say to you. And then to clearly communicate to them what's the potential payoff of these topics and so forth. recommend new and innovative partnerships, and put aside pet rocks. Everyone has pet rocks. We all want you to work together. We don't want you to come together at a table with an agenda. This is not agenda-seeking time. This is seeking out a collaboration. That's what we're trying to do here. And that's pretty much it. And so I wish you the best on a productive and very successful workshop, folks. Do you have a question? Bill, can you answer that? Someone else had a question. Hi. Yeah.
So I just comment back on what Dr. Sullivan said there. Real rapid improvement. So I think we can make real connections. A lot of really gross people in the room. I'm most concerned with the rapid part. The last time I checked, there was nothing rapid about R2O or O2R. And so if we don't have that rapid part focus and leverage what has already been done, it'll be a very difficult leverage. I don't think we'll get there with this rapid part. So my sorry for the incorrect comment, but I think that part really needs to be part of what we're thinking about this week, because if we're all we're thinking about is new research, certainly I think there is a role for that. No question about that. There's a large role for the great work that many people in the room have already done that we should leverage. Some of that's indicated in the white paper that you alluded to, but I think we need to just make that comment that it seems to tie into your slide.
I don't disagree with you, Ken. I mean, that's a very important. I think what the agencies know in particular is looking for is, as opposed to a 10-year research program, they're looking at something we can move ahead. Not everything I've said here that you may come up with will be done through a test bed. I mean, take something just as simple as NOAA weather radio and use a polygon method for warning dissemination. That's something that doesn't necessarily, I look over at John and others, as I say, I don't think that necessarily Jason would have to go through a test bed process. But they're going to be in the meetings, and they're going to have something to say about these things to shed some more light on this. Okay, I agree with your comment. All right, folks, I'm over time, Harold. Apologize.
Okay. Now everybody else starts doing things. Okay. We're going to do a little time of self-introduction. You've got 90 seconds. This is rapid fire. We're going around the room. Okay. When you've got 15 seconds left on your time, my hand goes up. You get to your time. You get the delay warning, and then more serious consequences follow. Okay. This is you do not. We're going to go to that end right there. You do not feel pressured to use all of your time. Introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, what your expertise and research interests are. Okay, and we're going to start right up here with Eve. Go.
I'm Eve Grunfest, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, Trauma Health and Hazard Center, Director of Social Science woven into meteorology, and I'm really happy to be here. It's very exciting. My issues are that we have to stop just thinking about products that go to people. We have to focus on success stories, find out what motivates people to do what they do when it's successful. We always focus on the dead people, but millions of people have responded to warnings or found ways to be successfully resilient on their own. And then thirdly, I guess I just really want to make sure that we listen to stakeholders and that we really start to change this so that the things that we develop are actually what people need and want, and that's it.
Dr. Laura Myers, Mississippi State University Social Science Research Center. I do research on emergency management and emergency planning stakeholders, and I've been working with South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi on improving the weather warning process.
Hi, I'm Roger Wakimoto. I'm currently the director of the National Center for Atmospheric Research, called NCAR. But before I took on this job, I was at UCLA for 22 years doing a lot of basic research on severe storms. But with the new hat, I've gained a big appreciation of interdisciplinary research. And so the societal impacts, social research has really intrigued me. So I hope I can mesh both in when I'm here this week.
I'm Warren Qualley. I'm with Harris Corporation, senior weather expert there. My background is meteorology and specifically aviation meteorology. I spent 25 years at American Airlines where I ran the weather department and learned through that period of time, since most of our users were about 50 feet away from us, how we needed to make our messages relevant to those users, whether it's to the flight dispatchers, to pilots, what have you. And so over the years, I've really come to appreciate that meteorology is a great tool, great information, a lot of good things going on with research in meteorology, but if we can't get actionable messages to the users relevant to them in their terms, that nothing's going to really move forward that much. So I'm real happy to see the social science aspect brought into this workshop.
Great. I'm Betsy Weatherhead. I'm at University of Colorado Boulder, working closely with NOAA Global Systems Division. I'm also, as Steve mentioned, the co-chair of this coming summer community meeting for AMS, which will be in Norman, Oklahoma, and we'll be following up on this Weather Ready Nation theme. We're going to really focus on engaging the academic and the private sector along with the governmental sectors in terms of achieving a more weather-ready nation. I encourage all of you to come. There'll be a real emphasis this time on social media and getting the words out and in on what's happening in really dire situations. So I encourage you to participate. I have a long history of cross-disciplinary work. I find it rewarding, challenging, and so I'm very happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Chuck Doswell. My current affiliation is kind of nebulous. I guess I would have to admit at the moment it's the University of Oklahoma. I've spent most of my career in research studying severe storms, and one experience is the reason why I'm here today. It is the opportunity I had for many years to chase storms with one of the best meteorologists that ever graced the halls of the National Weather Service, Al Mueller. He told me, and he convinced me, that even a perfect weather forecast does no good if it doesn't reach its intended user, and if for some reason the user cannot use that information. That's why I'm here. I hope we can begin to fix that.
I really thought Chuck was going to go over time to see what I did. Ryan doesn't want to say anything, okay?
You know me already. I'll just say a few words about National Severe Storms Laboratory. The focus there is developing tools and radar. Doppler radar was developed at the lab that is used now at the National Weather Service. Is a focus on advancing numerical weather prediction. There's a program called Warning Forecast we're very much involved with. And thirdly, hydrometeorology applications, flash flood kinds of things. Every one of these components has a strong social science component. The lab is very keenly interested in further developing that capacity. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Brad Small. I'm a program officer at the National Science Foundation in the Physical and Dynamic Meteorology program. I'm also on the team that's working on the SEAS hazard solicitation that Dr. Koch kindly introduced. What else can I say? Had an 18-plus year career working with NOAA, mainly in the National Severe Storms Laboratory, and a research facultyship at University of Washington sandwiched in between. I'm primarily here to listen and learn from all of you, and maybe to twist some of your arms to serve as reviewers for the proposals that we receive, because that input is important too. I'm looking forward to a very productive meeting.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Wong-Prody, and I'm at Carnegie Mellon University. And I'm in the departments of Social and Decision Sciences and Engineering and Public Policy. My background is in risk perceptions and risk communications, and right now I'm interested in research on communicating probabilities and changing probabilities to the lay public. And I'm here just to learn more and to help think about how to set a research agenda. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm John Cortinas. I'm the director of the Office of Weather and Air Quality and also of the U.S. Weather Research Program within NOAA. Like Brad, I'm a program manager within NOAA, and I think I've already started twisting some arms for the social science competition that we currently have out within the Office for the U.S. Weather Research Program. So again, also very interested in hearing from the community. Your input is actually very important to us as we try to set and move forward with future research opportunities and identifying those priorities. Thank you.
I'm Craig Trumbo. I have appointments at the Colorado State University Department of Journalism and Technical Communication and the Colorado School of Public Health and Department of Health and Behavioral Research. Also with the Center for Disaster and Risk Analysis at Colorado State University. My current work that's relative to the interests here are a study of risk perception, optimistic bias, and evacuation decision making for hurricanes. The areas that I have to offer for this meeting would be from my expertise in communication, the message design and testing of messages across various platforms, including new media, risk perception and communication in various contexts, and the social, psychological, and economic models in decision making.
My name is Robert Hoffman. I'm a senior research scientist at the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition in Pensacola, Florida. It's a not-for-profit public benefit corporation of the state of Florida university system. I was trained as an experimental psychologist. My affiliation now is with the community of practice referring to itself as cognitive systems engineering. I have been studying the knowledge and reasoning of expert weather forecasters for some 25 or so years.
I'm Daphne Ledoux. I'm with the University of Oklahoma and newly a research scientist there now. About halfway through my career, I went back to school and finished a degree in adult education. So I can speak broadly to adult education, but I also particularly focused on professional learning for my doctorate and studied how meteorologists learn to forecast the weather. And although some researchers have written on forecasting, some of it isn't published, as I found out when I contacted Robert a few months ago. And also, my advisor worked in medicine, and I was astounded to find out how much has been written and studied about practicing medicine and how far we have to go in thinking about the face of NOAA and the forecasters themselves.
I'm Dale Morris. I work at the University of Oklahoma, and I'm particularly assigned to the National Weather Service's Warning Decision Training Branch, where we train forecasters on all aspects of the warning process, science, technology, and human factors. Prior to that, I spent 10 years doing outreach and education to the emergency management community. So sort of my current interests are working with simulations and particularly trying to research and applications of distributed and collaborative simulations among all people that are interested in the warning process, particularly the integrated warning team of broadcasters, forecasters, and emergency managers.
I'm Greg Stumpf. I also work for the University of Oklahoma, and I'm assigned to the National Weather Service Meteorological Development Lab. Although I'm stationed in Norman, Oklahoma, prior to that, I was assigned to NSSL, leading the team developing severe weather warning applications. I've had about 24, 25 years of experience in doing research application transition to operations, and I'm currently also assigned to the Hazardous Weather Testbeds Experimental Warning Program side. We're gearing up and getting ready for our spring test in just a couple of weeks here. I have some interest in not just testing new technology for forecasters, but also testing new ways of delivering hazard information out there. I think the system we have right now is seriously flawed. We know that. It's seriously rusty as well, and we need to think about new ways to deal with that.
My first name is Chun Gu. If it's too hard for you, you can call me Lu, which is my last name. And I'm another program officer from National Science Foundation's Physical and Dynamic Meteorology, along with Dr. Bradley Small. You can see 2 program officers came from same program to see how serious we are committed to this activity. And my background by training is not a government bureaucrat. My background is really meteorology. And I'm here and want to work with our university PIs, private sector scientists, and also work with a mission agency, NOAA, to build a coalition to solve this national severe weather storm problem. And we are trying to identify new scientific challenges to filling up these gaps for the basic understanding of this problem.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ken Carey. I'm a senior principal system engineer at Noblest, a private sector firm in the Falls Church area. I was in the Air Force for about 21 years. I've been at Noblest now for about 10. I'm currently supporting NOAA and NASA on a variety of projects. Also adjunct instructor for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and on the University of Kentucky's Center for Risk Sciences and a chair of the National Weather Service's Comet Advisory Board. What makes me tick is, and Chuck, you said it well, is, great forecast is awesome, but if people don't do anything, I'm sort of the guy that asks the so what question, and so the question is where do we go from here? And I've been to the Was-Is workshop, many of you have been there, and I'm just beginning to understand a little bit better about, as a physical scientist, what it means to understand what we do and how it impacts people, and I'm fascinated by that, and it's a very challenging area, so I'm actually looking forward to getting to know many of you who don't think like me and think more of the social science side, which we absolutely need. That fusion of the social and physical science community is just incredibly important. And so I don't want to waste my time here this week, and I'm hoping that together we can develop a actionable agenda, which Steve and Harold mentioned earlier, that really would make a difference, because I know that you all are very busy too, and I'd like to do something together that's really meaningful. That's kind of what makes me tick and why I'm here, and I'm hoping that we can do something important.
I am Kevin Laws. I'm the Science and Operations Officer here in Birmingham. Go back to Steve Koch days back at NC State and Kevin Up at UH, but I'm back in Alabama now, and I guess the thing that I want to express to you is that, down to the operational level, I'm maybe the reason that you're all here, because out of the 35 tornado emergencies that the Birmingham office has issued, I've probably issued about half of them. I've also had my fair share of false alarms, so I certainly want to hear the perspectives of you guys, but I also want to give you some feedback on the challenges of training, the meteorologists in the offices today. Everybody thinks it's more like a robotic process, but those are human beings too, and there's a lot of emotions and a lot of intensity that goes in behind that. So I want to offer to you some of the challenges that we face down on the ground level training the forecasters. That's a very important message that I can share with you.
Hi, I'm Erica Kulagowski, and I'm a fire protection engineer at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I've worked on investigations of the World Trade Center and Rhode Island nightclub, and in 2005, I realized that as a fire protection engineer, I didn't understand as much as I needed to know about the people aspect of these emergencies, and I went back to school to get my doctorate at the University of Colorado in sociology. So my research interests have been risk perception and evacuation decision making, and I'm currently involved on a team under the Disaster and Failure Studies program at NIST, studying the Joplin tornado. So we've been performing interviews with survivors of that tornado in an attempt to understand the decisions that they made and why there were survivors and fatalities and injuries. So thank you.
Hi, Greg Forbes from the Weather Channel. I've been a severe weather expert there for close to 13 years now. Prior to that, about 21 years on the meteorology faculty at Penn State. My current role, I'm used to dealing with 90 seconds, usually with a voice better than I have today. Sorry, I'm recovering from a bad cold early last week. I haven't got the voice fully back. At the Weather Channel, we're one of those communicators and the partners between the research and the operations and and the public. We try to get the message out on not just the weather video channel, but pretty much every other platform you can think of, because we have radio, we're on the web, the internet, we have mobile platforms, direct notification, social media, you name it. We try to get the word out and do a lot of awareness kind of trying to educate as well. So everything that gets done or arises from here, we try to transition to the public. I did want to make one comment. It's on a larger time and scale than what our challenges are here for this meeting, but I have to deal just about every day with severe weather somewhere in the country, and a lot of that is pretty far from the routine network of National Weather Service radars, and so it's a longer term thing, but for the big program managers here, we have to not lose the ball on what I think is needed to reduce that false alarm rate, is these gap filling radars. When they're way away from the radar and you're seeing way up above cloud base, it's hard. So anything to fill those gaps, I think, would help with reduce the false alarm rate. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Heinzelman from the National Severe Storms Laboratory, and I'm a leader of the Phased Array Radar and Meteorological Studies team, and I'm also adjunct assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma. So much of what I do is radar data analysis, understanding severe storms, but then also looking at how technology like that can perhaps improve decision-making of forecasters and making sure that technology that comes down the pipeline meets the needs of users and has products associated with it that are useful in the end, rather than just pushing it down without those considerations. And I've been doing some interactions with Daphne and others to make sure we're using meaningful methods and understanding the social science side of things. So I'm very excited about being here and interacting with more folks along that line.
Hi, my name is Kim Kloko, and I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Oklahoma in the Department of Geography. I'm very humbled and pleased to be here as a doctoral student, one of the few non-tenured professionals in the room. My background is kind of split between meteorology, economics, and psychology. So I'm very interested in risk perception research, a variety of applications to that in weather and climate. Particularly interesting to this room is my doctoral research focuses on tornado warning systems and how people perceive risk and understand risk. It's communicated and communicating different ways of communicating and understanding uncertainty. So I was planning a series of experiments back in 2010, and my committee advised me to do a real-world case study to complement those, saying that in 2011, if something was to come up, that it'd be good for me to do it, to pursue it. So after the Southeast outbreak, I came out here and was welcomed by all of the wonderful people in the back from Alabama, Bill and James and Jim, among others, and did a case study of the April 27th outbreak, which was really, really enlightening. I'm glad that you guys were so welcoming. Thanks for having me here.
Paul Markowski, Associate Professor of Meteorology at Penn State University, where I've been for about 11 years now. I'm a physical scientist who studies thunderstorms, tornadoes being one of the hazards of the storms that I focus on with observations and models, but I've always been interested in transferring the research to operations. We give a number of seminars at Penn State to the local Weather Service office and are involved with the COMET program, training the Sioux and the Weather Service as well. I was actually a Weather Service volunteer as an undergraduate, so I've always been kind of the weather nerd that's been interested in the forecasting side, even though nowadays I work in the ivory tower.
Thanks. Yvette Richardson, and I'm an associate professor at Penn State as well. I'm pretty solidly in the physical science part of the realm, looking at tornadoes, going out collecting observations within them, around them. In particular, I'm interested in how they form, but also how they die, because I think that's also important for making more precise warnings and ending warnings when they should be. So those are some of the things I'm interested in. But the reason that I went into this area, deciding on a PhD and looking at all the different possibilities,
was because of those societal impacts that were associated with tornadoes. And so it's great to be part of a group that's trying to really fuse the two of those things together